All right, so Devin, I know you had a question about the masculine, feminine, how to tell the difference when, uh, they don't have the obvious endings. So let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, when they have the obvious endings, the Hirik Yod Mem, masculine plural, Kametse almost always going to be feminine singular. There are a couple instances like we saw with a ta here. It's got that comet's hay, even though it's masculine singular, but the vast majority of comet's hay is going to indicate feminine singular. Oftentimes, if you have a masculine singular with a hay on the end, instead of comet's hay, you'll see segel hay there. So segel hay should flag masculine for you. And then obviously the holam vav tav, the ot suffix, that is often going to be feminine, or that's most often going to be feminine as well. Very rarely will it be something else. But as I think we discussed before, if we go back to, let's look at vocabulary for chapter 2, Av. Now let's see if he has a note here. He doesn't. There are a lot of uh, there are a lot of things about the way that Futato does his vocabulary that I think could be tweaked and improved. This would be another example of being. Now, I get why there's not a note on of right here because you haven't learned the plural endings yet in chapter 2. But once we learn the plural endings, I would expect maybe a note here about previous vocabulary that's relevant. So I would expect a note here that the plural form of av is avot, even though it looks feminine with the holam vav tav suffix, it's still masculine. He doesn't tell you that, and so you don't really have a way of learning which of these words takes an unexpected ending. The best way to find this out, I suppose, would be to go to your lexicon, and in your lexicon, for example, we've got the word eretz. Now, eretz is one of these words that does not have a comet's hay ending, but it is feminine. Now, unfortunately, even the lexicon here, it doesn't tell you that it's feminine. Nowhere here does it mention that it's feminine. It does show you, if you kind of look at the major head word and then run across here, I'll kind of break down what this information means for you. CA means circa, that means about. So eretz occurs in the Hebrew Bible about 2,400 times. That's what this X means, number of occurrences. Excuse me. And then we've got here the form with the definite article. It's ha'aretz. And then here we've got another form that I guess is supposed to indicate an article, even if the hay is missing. Maybe this, oh, actually, this is the form in pause. This is what the form will look like when it is either the final word of a verse or the final word of half of a verse. Now, you don't need to worry about any of that. Pause, you don't need to worry about that stuff. At least until next semester, if not later on. But that's what this is. This is the locative form. So Hebrew has something called a directional hay or a locative hay. And so what happens is oftentimes you'll add a comet's hay to the end of a noun, and it would go from meaning earth to meaning earthward, like toward the earth, basically. And then this is just another form of that locative. So it has two different forms that it uses. CS, this stands for construct state. We'll learn about that in a couple lessons. FS stands for suffix. So if this were your land, eretz of you, your eretz, it would be artsaka, artsaka. And then another form, again, this I suppose would be, this might just be an alternative form, or this, yeah, this would be an alternative form. Instead of artsaka, it would be artseka. So the difference between these two, in artseka, the accent's on the final syllable. In artsecha, the accent is on the tsere. All right, and then the plural form here, we see that would be aratzot. Aratzot. And that ot ending may be the holam vav that we're used to, holam vav tav, or the vav may drop out and it may just be a holam tav, but this is the plural form. Now this is the form we would expect if it were feminine, which it is, but it is a little frustrating that even here they don't tell you whether this is feminine or masculine. Then the construct form again of the plural that we will learn about later, and then another suffix form. Here we go. It does tell us this is the gender. So at the very end, this means feminine. Let's find another noun and see, like for example, av. Let's see if av also lists the gender. All right, so we've got av, construct form. Genesis 17:4, I suppose, I think that means this is the only place where you get av in construct, but that seems unlikely. So all these different forms that we talked about, and then you get to the end and it doesn't tell you masculine. So why does it tell you feminine on eretz and not masculine on av? Maybe the reason is because it's only going to mark the gender of the disputed ones, or not disputed, but the ones that are different from what you would suppose according to the form. Like if you see av, you're going to suppose that it's masculine. But if you see eretz, you might suppose that's masculine, but it's actually feminine. Maybe that's why they put it there. Let me think of another one here. Let's see if davar, if I'm right about why they put the gender in this entry, then davar won't have gender because it looks masculine and is masculine. So let's take a look at davar and see if it has it. So davar, all these forms, and it does not have a gender because it is what it looks like. What about, let me think of another word that doesn't look, one would be ruach, but ruach sometimes switches genders. Let's see what they have here. Let's see. All right, usually feminine, but quite often masculine. Okay, well, that makes sense, I suppose. What is another word that looks masculine but is actually feminine? Or, let's see, I think ir is masculine. Let's take a look at that. Okay, ir looks masculine, but as you can see in the, well, nope. Okay. Here's the good reason why they include it here. It is feminine even though it looks masculine. And even in the plural, it takes the masculine plural ending. But if you were to see an adjective with this, the adjective would be in the feminine plural. So if it were the holy city, the word for holy is kadosh. If you wanted to make it plural to match irim, it would actually be irim. Let's see here, kadoshot. Irim kadoshot would be the plural form there. So it looks like that's the formula. If you have a question about the gender of a noun, come to your lexicon and take a look and see if the very last thing in the entries is an F or an M. And if you don't see anything there, then it is what it looks like. But if you do see something there, then you know that it isn't what it looks like, I guess. All right, so that might be the easiest way for you to access the gender of these nouns. Is there ever a time where it would be confusing if you don't know the gender and it isn't obvious? This is the situation where it would give you trouble, is when you, and again, we haven't done adjectives yet. We will get to adjectives in a few lessons, but adjectives don't have their own gender or number. So I talked about the adjective kadosh. Kadosh means holy. Kadosh itself is not masculine or feminine. It takes the gender of the noun that it's modifying. So if we were to say holy city, even though ir looks masculine, it's actually feminine. So the feminine form of kadosh would be kadoshah, the comet's hey ending. The adjective never lies about the gender. But the reason why this might be confusing if you don't know the gender is you might see ir kadoshah, you might look at ir and think it's masculine, and then see kadoshah and notice that it's feminine, and that would make you think, well, kadoshah isn't modifying ir, it doesn't go with ir because it doesn't match in gender. That would be a situation where if you don't know the gender of ir, that would be confusing because you wouldn't understand what kadosh is supposed to go with, because you know it's supposed to match both the gender and the number of the word that it's modifying. So is that helpful at all? That is not as definite of an answer as I'd like to give. I really do wish that these grammars, like Futato, would indicate for you as you're learning vocabulary whether it's masculine or feminine. Now, if we keep going, let's look at vocabulary for lesson 6. Let's see. So here, now that we've learned the, different endings, when we get a word like nefesh, nefesh is feminine. But again, it doesn't look feminine because it doesn't have the comet's hey. Well, now that we've learned our endings, he's going to tell you that soul, self, I don't know why he puts it over here instead of over here, but that this word is feminine. So at this point, after lesson 4, I would hope that every time you learn a word that is a different gender than what it looks like, I would hope that he's going to tell you. It seems to me it would be easy just to give the gender for all of them, but again, I have not written our textbook, so, and Futato, he has much more experience teaching than I do, so I'm just giving my own opinion here. All right, now that we've covered that, there was one other question that came in that I wanted to take a look at, and that was going back over one more time how to determine whether a Sheva is vocal or silent, how to determine whether a Dagesh is vocal, or I'm sorry, whether a Dagesh is strong or weak. So let's just run back through that real quick, and then I also want to cover vowels one more time through, just to kind of cement it, because like I said, that first week, learning all of this information in 1 week, that was a lot to manage. And so I want to make sure we're reviewing it as we go through here, just to make sure it sticks. So let's talk about Sheva first. The primary question to ask, and I'm actually working on some flow charts that I'll publish for you guys of basically how you can determine it. It's just got a set of questions that you ask, and as you go through these questions, it will help you determine, for one, whether a Sheva is vocal or silent, and then it'll also help you determine whether another flow chart will help you determine whether a Dagesh is strong or weak. I will publish those this week. I'll share the link. And I'll probably just put them in an announcement so it'll come to your email. But that may be helpful. So right now, what can I tell you to kind of really hit home how to tell whether Sheva is vocal or silent? This right here is really, if I give you one piece of information, this is the most important information that you need to know about Sheva. And that is the short and silent rule. And the reason why this is so important is because it's so flexible. It really can help you in just about any situation that you're going to come up against. Now, it may not be intuitive at first, but we'll work through some examples here. So let's take, I think that somewhere he probably gives a list. I guess we'll just take a look at these here and kind of work through them. So if I just apply this rule to every word that I see here, what do I end up with? Because there are a lot of rules. For example, if Sheva is if Sheva is under the first letter of a word, it has to be vocal. That's sort of a separate rule you can memorize. But you don't even need that rule, because watch, I'll apply this rule to that situation. Asking myself this question: is there a short vowel immediately preceding the letter that has the Sheva? Is there a short vowel immediately preceding? No, there is no short vowel. Therefore, it is not silent. Now you might say there's no vowel at all. Right, there's no vowel at all. But if there's no vowel at all, that means there's no short vowel preceding the letter with the Sheva. Therefore, no short, no silent. This is vocal. Let's apply it here. We've got our word midbar. The Sheva is under the dalet. So we ask our question: is there a short vowel immediately preceding the letter holding the Sheva? Well, what's immediately preceding? Hirik. Is hirik a short vowel? Yes. Now, there's no shortcut on short vowels. You have to memorize your short vowels. There are 5 of them. They are patach, segel, hirik, kametz chatuf, and kibbutz. Those 5 vowels are your short vowels. Hirik is one of those. The letter holding the Sheva is immediately preceded by a hirik, which is short. Therefore, yes short, yes silent. Midbar has a silent Sheva. If we come here to the next one, yaktil. Is there a short vowel immediately preceding the letter with the Sheva? Well, there is a patach immediately preceding the letter with the Sheva. Is patach short? Yes. Patach, segel, hirik, kametz hatuf, kibbutz. So patach counts as short, yes, silent. Yaktil has a silent Sheva. So let's look at these other ones here. Devarim, we already saw, actually we saw the same word up here. So again, there is no short vowel in front of the Sheva. No short, no silent. This is vocal. What about this one? Yaktilu. Now this is a separate rule as well that you can learn. You can learn this as a separate rule. If there are 2 Shevas in a row in the middle of a word, the first is always silent, the second is always vocal. If you memorize that, it'll be really easy to tell what's what just by looking at it. You don't have to do any math. You don't have to ask if anything's short. But the short and silent rule does apply. So let's look at this second Sheva and ask ourselves, is the letter holding the Sheva immediately preceded by a short vowel? Well, what immediately precedes this letter is a Sheva. Well, Sheva is not short. Whether it's silent or vocal, it's not short. Sheva is a reduced vowel if it's vocal, and it's not a vowel at all if it's silent. So even if we don't know what this Sheva is yet, we know it's not short because there are only 5 short vowels, and Sheva is not one of them. No short vowel, not silent. Therefore, this Sheva is vocal. And that fits our rule here. But we don't have to learn this other rule because this one still applies. Now, this rule is a shortcut. It's going to give you an answer a lot faster if you just remember that when you have 2 consecutive Shevas within a word, we're not talking about the end, which is an exception that we'll learn in a week or 2. But when we have 2 consecutive Shevas within a word, first is silent, second is vocal. You can remember that alphabetically. S for silent comes before V for vocal. All right, so when you have 2 together, silent, then vocal. It's just a shortcut. It's just easier to figure out whether it's vocal or silent that way. But even if you forget that rule, or you don't want to learn another rule, you can still apply this rule to it. Is the tet immediately preceded by a short vowel? No. Sheva is not a short vowel. Not short, not silent. The tet has a vocal Sheva. What about the first Sheva, this Sheva under the kof? Well, is the kof, which holds the Sheva, is it immediately preceded by a short vowel? It's preceded by a hirik, which is a short vowel. Yes short, yes silent. There you go. Now, let's look at these three examples, and we'll go to the Dagesh. All right, so here we have milchama. Is the Sheva, or the letter holding the Sheva, immediately preceded by a short vowel? It's preceded by hirik. Hirik is short, yes silent. Milchama has a silent Sheva. What about mizbechot? Mizbechot. Now, obviously, I know the value of these Shevas in order to pronounce them. You're not going to pronounce it accurately if you don't know whether the Sheva is vocal or silent. But this word here, let's just start with the harder one. Let's start with the second one here. Is this letter holding the Sheva, the bait, immediately preceded by a short vowel? Well, it's preceded by a Sheva. Sheva is not a short vowel. Not a short vowel, not silent. Therefore, the bait has a vocal Sheva. What about the Zayin? Is the Zayin, which is holding this Sheva, immediately preceded by a short vowel? It's preceded by a hirik, which is a short vowel. Therefore, short equals silent. Zayin has a silent Sheva, mizbechot. And then finally, we'll look at yedaber. Yedaber, the very first letter. And again, you can memorize this rule. If a Sheva is under the first consonant of a word, the Sheva is vocal. Shortcut, right there, boom, you know it's vocal. But if you don't want to memorize these rules, you can still fall back on your one basic rule, short and silent, and you can ask yourself, is the yod immediately preceded by a short vowel? No, it's not. No short, no silent. Yedaber has a vocal Sheva. All right? So that's your basic rule that you want to keep in mind for Sheva, and if you apply it consistently, you will get your answer. If you want to memorize these extra rules, they will save you time. They are shortcuts, and they're helpful. But if it's just too much information for you, you can always fall back on this rule, and it should work in every situation. All right, let's talk about Dagesh. So we know that Dagesh can be weak or it can be strong. When it's weak, the weak one only occurs in a Begad Kafat letter. That's a Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, and Tav. Those 6 letters are the only letters that can hold a weak Dagesh. So what does the weak Dagesh do? Well, in ancient Hebrew, it probably affected the pronunciation of all the letters. That change in pronunciation only comes through in modern Hebrew in the Beit, the Kaf, and the Pei. So the Gimel and the Dalet and the Tav, they sound the same whether they have a Dagesh or not. But in the Beit, the Kaf, and the Pei, those 3 letters, the pronunciation of the word changes. All right, so in our flowchart, if we see a letter that has a Dagesh in it, there's one simple question that we can ask to start off with. All right, so that is the letter with the Dagesh Begad Kafat? Is it a Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, or Tav? If the answer to that is no, if it is not Begad Kafat, you automatically know it's a strong Dagesh. Because the only letters that can have a weak Dagesh are the Begad Kafat letters. All right? So, if a Dagesh is in a consonant other than Begad Kafat, it is strong. That's the first question. You see a Dagesh, you ask, is this Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? If it is not, you know it is strong. And you'll get to a point where you don't even have to ask that question. You just, when you see a non-Begad Kafat letter having a Dagesh, you just immediately know that this is a strong Dagesh. So if a weak Dagesh hardens the pronunciation, what does a strong Dagesh do? The strong Dagesh doubles the letter. All right. Now this causes a little bit of confusion because, well, there's a few reasons why. Let's talk it out here. All right. So let's take okay, well, let's just work through the flowchart questions again. So the first question um, is actually, you know what, let me pull up the flowchart that I've been working on here. It's not finished, so ignore part of it, but it'll just be easier for me to walk through it this way. So not there's a bunch of junk here. This junk won't be here when I'm done. But here's our first question. Is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? If it is not, then it's strong. You know that automatically. But what if it is in a Begad Kafat letter? How do we tell the strong from the weak in that case? Well, is the Dagesh in the first letter of a word? If it is, then you know it's weak. So if you have a word that begins with a Dagesh, that is only going to happen in Begad Kafat letters, and it's only going to happen with a weak Dagesh. So, if it's in a Begad Kafat letter and it's the first letter of a word, you know that it's weak. What if it's not the first letter of the word? Well, is it in the last letter of the word? If it's in the last letter of the word, this would be another yes over here. Sorry, these are backwards. If it's in the last letter of a word, then boom, it's weak as well. What if it's not in the last letter of the word? Well, then we ask one final question. Is the letter with Dagesh immediately preceded by a short vowel? And this is really honestly, sorry. This is the only question that really, really matters. You could make this your first question if you wanted to, and it would still get you to the right place. All right, so is the letter with Dagesh immediately preceded by a short vowel? If it is immediately preceded by a short vowel, then let's grab another yes here. Whoops. Then it is strong. If it is not immediately preceded by a short vowel, then it is weak. All right. So I will actually, let's just put this in bold. All right. Because this is the most important question. This will walk you through the different situations that a Dagesh can be in. But just like with the Sheva, we had sort of one most important rule, and the other rules are kind of shortcuts. Same with the Dagesh. We have one most important question. Is the letter with the Dagesh immediately preceded by a short vowel? Let's look at some examples of that. All right, so let me pull the workbook back up here. All right, and let's go through these. So here we've got midbar. And let's just ask, is the letter with the Dagesh immediately preceded by a short vowel? Well, it's preceded by a Sheva. Sheva is not a short vowel. So, no. Now, let me make a slight correction here. You will usually see this worded a little bit differently. Usually you'll see this, is the letter with the Dagesh preceded by a vowel sound or a consonant sound? Okay, that's a little wordy, but it's usually given this way. But if it is a Dagesh forte, if it is strong, that would be the case if it's a vowel sound. If it is strong, it's going to be, most situations it's going to be a short vowel. Okay, so this is a more precise question to ask. Is the sound preceding the letter with the Dagesh consonantal, or is it a consonant, or is it a vowel? Let's look back at the example. Because you might say, well, technically the bait is preceded by a Sheva. Isn't a Sheva a vowel? Well, in this case, Sheva is silent because it's preceded by a short vowel. And so a silent Sheva is not a vowel. A silent Sheva has no value. And so what really the significance of the silent Sheva is just to mark the end of the syllable. The sound that immediately precedes this bait is not vocalic, it's not a vowel, it's the d sound of the dalet, mid bar. Okay, so since the letter with the Dagesh is preceded by a consonant sound, not a vowel sound, we know that this is weak. So a consonant sound is weak, a vowel sound is strong. Now, how are you going to keep those separated? How are you going to keep those in your mind? How are you going to remember that the vowel sound equals strong and the consonant sound equals weak? This is how I do it. When you've got a consonant sound here, there's not enough vowel to hold a double letter. In order to have a double letter, you need vowels before it and after it. Excuse me. In order to double, let's look at Kiddush here. In order for this word to support a double dalet, it needs a vowel on both sides. It needs a vowel after it, and it needs a vowel before it. When you've got a vowel after it and a vowel before it, the word is strong enough to support a strong Dagesh. As I think about that, that doesn't really come off as a really witty, snappy way of keeping these distinct. That's more of just sort of a linguistic explanation of what's going on. So maybe you can come up with a memory device for how to distinguish the weak Dagesh from the, how to associate the weak Dagesh with a consonantal sound before it and the strong Dagesh with a vocalic sound before it. But those are the connections you need to make. If it is strong, it's going to have a vowel sound before the letter. If it is weak, it's going to have a consonantal sound. All right. Let's look at a couple more examples. Mishpat. So we have a Dagesh here. First question. Is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? If it's not, we immediately know it's strong. But unfortunately it is. Pei is a Begad Kafat letter, so we have to say no. All right. Is the letter with the Dagesh the first letter of the word? No. If it was the first letter, we would know that it's weak, but it's not the first letter, so we don't know that yet. Is it the last letter of the word? No. If it were the last letter, we would know that it's weak, but it's not the last letter, so we don't know that yet. And so then we come to our final decision-making question. Is the letter with the Dagesh immediately preceded by a vowel sound? Usually a short vowel. No, it's not. It's preceded by a silent Sheva, and we know it's silent because Hirik is short, therefore the Sheva is silent. So it's preceded by a consonantal sound. Consonantal sound before a Dagesh means you have a weak Dagesh. What about Yedaber? The bait has a Dagesh. So, is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? Yes. If it weren't, we would immediately know it's strong, but it is a Begad Kafat, so we don't know yet. Okay, is the letter the first letter of the word? If it is, we know it's weak, but it's not, so we don't know yet. Is the letter the final letter of the word? If it is, we know it's weak, but it's not the final letter, so we don't know that yet. So we come to the turning point. Is the letter with the Dagesh immediately preceded by a vowel sound or a consonantal sound? Well, here we have Patach, which is a vowel sound. Therefore, we have a strong Dagesh. Vowel sound before a Dagesh is strong. Final example, Malkenu. All right, so we have a Dagesh in the Kaf. Is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? If it weren't, we would immediately know it's strong, but it is, so we don't know yet. Is the letter holding the Dagesh the first letter of the word? If it were, we would immediately know it's weak, but it's not the first letter, so we don't know yet. Is the letter with the Dagesh the final letter of the word? If it were the final letter of the word, we would immediately know that it's weak, but it's not the final letter, so we don't know that yet. Now we come to the decision point. Is the letter with the Dagesh immediately preceded by a vowel sound or a consonantal sound? Again, we see a Sheva here. This is silent because it's preceded by a short vowel. Short is silent, so there is no vowel sound here. That means that the kaf is immediately preceded by the lamed sound, and that is consonantal. If it's preceded by a consonant, if a dagesh is preceded by a consonantal sound, it is weak. All right. So that covers the dagesh, the sheva, and then what I really wanted to hammer on the vowels is you must know which vowels are short. You absolutely have to know that these 5 vowels are short vowels. No other vowels are short besides these 5. And these 5 are never long, okay, or medium. Obviously, this one looks like it could be medium, but the difference between the kametz and the kametz chatuf, the kametz chatuf can only occur in a closed, that means the syllable begins and ends with a consonant, not a vowel, in a closed and unaccented syllable. That's how you know you have a kametz chatuf. All right. Any other questions before we take a look at the Futato exercises from last week and maybe a sneak peek at this week's lessons? But I will pull up last week's Futato exercises and give you a chance to send in any question you might have that you want me to go over, or topic or exercise. All right, it looks like our exercises from last week were just section A and section B. Now this is basically what we've been doing for the last several minutes, but here are some more examples. So I'm going to walk through these, and if I see something that I think might be confusing, I'll stop on it, but you've got the answers to these, so I'm not going to spend as much time on every single one of these as I just did. We'll go through here, I'll explain why the answer is what it is, but I'm only going to stop if I see one that I think might be confusing. So here we're looking at Sheva. We need to know whether the Sheva is vocal or silent. And again, I'm going to stick with the short and silent rule as my main justification. I'm not going to worry about, 2 in a row. I'm just going to say whether it's short or silent based on, whether it's vocal or silent based on the short and silent rule. So number 1, we have mid-bar preceded by a hirik, which is short. That means it's silent. Yaktil preceded by a patak, which is short, so it's silent. Negdo, segel is short, therefore it's silent. Muktal. This would be a good example of the kametz chatuf question. Like, is this a kametz chatuf or not? Is it a kametz or a kametz chatuf? Well, let's first deal with the sheva. The kibbutz here is short, therefore the sheva is silent, muktal. But is it muktal or muktol? Is it kametz or kametz chatuf? Well, the way it's written here, we do have a closed syllable. Tet opens it, we've got our vowel, and then lamed closes the syllable. So it is closed. But is it unaccented? If it were unaccented, that would mean the accent is over here. Usually when the accent is not on the final syllable, it's marked somehow. Futato will sometimes put that syllable in blue. Sometimes you'll see the little arrow that I've used elsewhere. So this looks like an accented syllable, which confirms that this would be kametz rather than kametz chatuf. Kametz chatuf can only appear in a closed, unaccented syllable. Number 5, we've got mincha. Here we've got the hirik, which is short before the sheva, so it's silent. Kotvim. Okay, you'll notice I said kotvim and not kotvim. Kotvim is preceded by the holam vav, which is unchangeably long. It is not short. Therefore, it is not silent. This is a vocal sheva. Number 7, we've got berecha. Again, sere is what Futato calls a medium vowel. It is not short. Therefore, it is not silent. This is vocal. All right, number 8, we've got devarim. Now here we could use the rule that if it's the first letter of a word, it's always vocal. But we can also ask, is it preceded by a short vowel? No, there's no vowel. Therefore, it is not silent. It is vocal. Devarim. Number 9, we've got mizbachot. All right, so miz, the Zion Sheva, is preceded by a hirik, which is short, therefore it is silent. The Beit Sheva is preceded by a Sheva, a silent Sheva at that, not even a vocal Sheva. But neither Sheva is a short vowel. Therefore, the Beit's Sheva is vocal. Miz Bachot. All right, and we could also ask the question about the Dagesh here. Is this Dagesh weak or strong? Well, that depends. Is the sound before the letter with the Dagesh consonantal or is it vocalic? Here, it's Miz, silent Sheva, Bacha, so it is consonantal. The Zion is the last sound before the Beit. Consonant before the letter means it is a weak Dagesh. Number 10, we've got Derachim. Again, first letter is always vocal if the Sheva is there, but it's also not preceded by a short vowel, therefore it is not silent. Again, the Dagesh, is it the first letter of a word? Yes, we automatically know that it is weak then. However, we could also ask, is it preceded by a vocal sound? By a vowel sound? Or is it preceded by a consonantal sound? Well, you could say here neither. All right, but that's why we have those other rules in place. Is it a Begad Kufat letter? Yes. Is it the first letter of a word? Yes. Therefore, it is weak. All right. Number 11, we've got Kitlu. Kitlu. This is the tricky one. Okay, this is where students will sometimes stumble because we forget what's going on with the Dagesh. We're going to answer this in terms of the Sheva first, but you can't answer the Sheva question unless you understand how the Dagesh is working here. Because when we look at this, we would ask ourselves, the first question that we're going to ask in terms of the Sheva is it preceded by a short vowel? Short and silent. Well, you look at the hirik and you see a short vowel. And so you would say, yes, it's preceded by a short vowel, therefore it is silent. Here's the problem with that. When you have a Dagesh here, it's not actually preceded by the hirik. It's preceded by, and let me write this down here in Hebrew, because I've got the transliteration in English letters up here. But this is what you're actually seeing is the kof, hirik, tet, and then a silent Sheva, and then another tet, and then a vocal Sheva. This is what's going on inside of the Dagesh letter. You've actually got two letters here, and they both have Shevas. Now, if this had a patach, or if this had a kametz, or a sere, or a segel, or something like that, we would put that under the second one. But this first letter, there's no vowel within the Dagesh letter, so it has to be a silent Sheva. So we would get kit telu. All right? Well, when we look at it now, yeah, the first Sheva would be silent because of the hirik. But when we get to the second one, always remember when you've got a Dagesh and a Sheva, you're looking at the second Sheva, not the first one. Another rule we can throw at this to kind of give you a shortcut, and again, shortcuts are great, but you have to remember them. So you have to decide whether or not it's worth remembering the shortcut. But the shortcut we can throw in here is if you have a Sheva and a Dagesh in the same letter, that Sheva is going to be vocal. You will not have a Sheva silent in the same letter as a Dagesh. Okay. You got the rule? Okay. I'm going to pull the rug out from under you. We are going to learn in a couple weeks the one exception to that rule. But it occurs at the end of a word. Okay, so this stuff gets weird only when you're in the last letter of a word. Okay, when you have an internal Dagesh and an internal Sheva, as long as it's not in the final letter, If you've got a Dagesh and a Sheva in the same letter, it will be a vocal Sheva. Now here is why that's true. I just spelled out for you why that's true. Because this Dagesh is the second. This Dagesh is on the second tav, not the first tav. Whatever vowel you see under the Dagesh letter, it's under the second letter, not the first letter. All right? So when we look at this Sheva, understanding how the word is actually formed here, when we look at this second Sheva, and we ask, is it preceded by a short vowel? No, it's preceded by a tav. It's preceded by, you could say, a silent Sheva, but that is not a short letter. Therefore, this is vocal. Now, inevitably, I'm going to clip this portion, and I'm going to send this out as a separate video. You'll obviously be able to find the video for this conference in total, in its entirety, but I'm going to send out as a separate video this section on the Dagesh and the Sheva working together, because this is on the quiz. If it wasn't on last week's quiz, it'll certainly be on this week's quiz. And inevitably, half of the students will get a question like this wrong. All right, so this is why I'm spending so much time on this one. It's because you have to remember what's going on with the Dagesh. The Dagesh is doubling the letter. And whatever vowel you see under it, this goes on the second of those two letters, not the first. So that hirik is not immediately before the Sheva. There's a second tet in here between the two. All right. Moving on, we have got Malko. And again, this is silent because patak is short. We've got Sifro, which is silent because hirik is short. We've got Yedaber, which is vocal because it is not preceded by a short vowel. It's not preceded by any vowel. Again, we can look at the Dagesh here in the bait and ask ourselves, really the fundamental question is it preceded by a vowel sound or a consonantal sound? Well, we've got a vowel sound in here, and it just happens to be that it's short. Most of the time, this is going to be short, okay? But the real kind of dividing line is whether it's consonantal or whether it's a vowel sound. And it is a vowel sound, therefore it is strong. All right, number 15, we've got a Sheva as in the first letter of the word. That's always going to be vocal, but we can ask, is it preceded by a short vowel? No, therefore it is vocal. What about the bait here? Is the bait preceded by a short vowel? I'm sorry, we want to say, is the Sheva preceded by a short vowel here? And the answer is not exactly. It looks like it, but remember, when we've got a Dagesh and a Sheva in the same internal letter, it will always be vocal. Why? Because what we've really got here is Yod, Sheva, Dalet, Patach, Bait, silent Sheva, Bait, vocal Sheva, and then the Resh and the Shurik. All right, so is the second Sheva here immediately preceded by a short vowel? No, it's got a bait between the two. Let's look at the Dagesh now. Identify each Dagesh as weak or strong and give the reason. All right, so here we got mid-bar. The reason why this is weak is because it is preceded by a consonantal sound. The Sheva is silent. How do we know? Because it's got a hirik in front of it. All right, what about this one? Here we've got a vowel sound before the letter with the Dagesh. Okay, we've got a vowel sound. It's a hirik. Just happens to be short, as it will usually be. So with a vowel sound, the Dagesh is strong. Number 3, again, the Dagesh. The first question we can ask is it a Bagad Kafat letter? No. Okay, boom. We automatically know then that it is strong. But again, we have to memorize another rule if we're going to do that. If we want to just stick with the rule that always works, the question that always works, is the letter with the Dagesh immediately preceded by a vowel sound or a consonantal sound? It's a vowel sound. Vowel is strong. Number 4, is the Dagesh in a Bagad Kafat letter? Yes. If it weren't, we would know that it's strong, but we don't. So is it the first letter of the word? No. If it were, it would be weak. Is it the last letter of the word? No. If it were, it would be weak. So we come down to, is it preceded by a vowel sound or a consonantal sound? Well, here we've got a silent Sheva, so it's a consonantal sound, which means that this is weak. Nizbach. Number 5. We've got a Dagesh in the Tav. Is it a Begad Kafat letter? Yes. If it weren't, we would know it's strong. Is it in the first letter of the word? It is not in the first letter. Therefore, if it were in the first letter, we would know it's weak. If it were the last letter, we would know it's weak. But since it's medial, since it's it's internal, we have to ask, is it preceded by a vowel sound or a consonantal sound? This is a silent Sheva. So if a Dagesh is preceded by a silent Sheva, it's going to be a weak Dagesh. Mid-daber, here we've got the bait preceded by the patach sound, which is vocal, therefore it is strong. Amim is preceded by the vocal patach sound, vowel sound, therefore it is strong. But we also know that it's strong because it's in a non-Begad Kafat letter. Yiktov, the tav is preceded by a silent Sheva, therefore it's the kaf sound. Consonantal means it's weak. Number 9, we've got mizbachot. The bait is preceded by the silent Sheva. We know it's silent because of the hirik. Therefore, the zayin is the consonantal sound. Consonant means that the Dagesh is weak. Kitzim, the tzade is preceded by the hirik, which is a vowel sound, therefore it's strong. 11, we've got kitlu, the tet Dagesh is preceded by the hirik, which is a vowel sound, therefore it's strong. Malkut is the Dagesh preceded by a vowel sound or a consonantal sound. This is a silent Sheva because of the short patach, therefore it is the lamed consonantal sound. Consonantal is weak. Negdo is the dalet preceded by a vowel sound or a consonant sound. Well, again, Sheva is silent here because of the short segel, therefore it is the consonantal gimel sound, and the consonantal sound indicates a weak Dagesh. Number 14, we've got the bait with the Dagesh. Is the bait preceded by a vowel sound or a consonant sound? Well, this is a patach, which is a vowel sound. Therefore, vowel sound indicates a strong Dagesh. And then finally, we've got yedabru. The bait is preceded by the vowel, patach. Vowel indicates a strong Dagesh. As far as the Shevas go, we've got no short vowel before the first Sheva, so it's vocal. And then again, we've got that confusing situation where it looks like we've got a short vowel before the Sheva. But remember, this Dagesh means that there's another bait between the Sheva and the patach. So this is not preceded by a short vowel, even though it looks like it is. Therefore, this is vocal. All right. That'll be it for this week. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send them to me. Don't forget to start planning your online Connect assignment, how you're going to complete that. We've got tons of time, but start thinking about it now because you don't want to end up at the end of the semester and then while you're studying for final exam, you got to get this together as well. So make sure you're on top of that. If you have any questions about any of the assignments or if you run into you're looking at the digital lessons or anything and you see something that you think might be an error, let me know. I will make a log of those and report those to the course designer so that we can get them fixed. Hope you guys are having a great week. We'll see ya.